Welcome to the Own Your Unforgettable Story podcast. I'm Steve Garvin, and I'm joined by my lovely partner in crime, Yael Johnson. And we were just talking about how some things just don't work the way that you expect them to. Have you ever had something like that happen to you when you set out to check something off your list and it just doesn't work the way that it's supposed to? How about you, Yael?
Uh, well, I'm much better at handling these things these days than I used to be. So, what used to cause me to go into a frenzy, oh my God, this is broken, or that I can't get this to work, and I can't get, and then this isn't working for me, and then that's not cooperating, and then yeah, so I'd run off into a frenzy, and it would throw me right into like this panic attack, essentially.
Mm-hmm. I can relate. In fact, one of the things that I yell at that my family knows has encountered far too many times is that when technology doesn't work for me, I'm oftentimes cursing and uh, making a bozo of myself, and
Well said.
because things just don't work the way that I'd like them to work.
Yeah, my husband is the same way. He gets very frustrated with the with technology. He's like, well, it's supposed to. Why doesn't it do this? Because it's just not doing. It's not programmed that way, honey.
Or when it is programmed that way and it just doesn't work the way that it is supposed to be working.
That happens too sometimes.
So we're going to talk today about going from broken to whole.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking that, a lot of times we're like the computers or the technology or the car, when it's supposed to work a certain way and it doesn't work the way that you expect it to.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever felt that way personally in your life, Yael, where maybe you got a diagnosis that sent you off in a
I did.
tailspin?
Well, I did, as a matter of fact. That's actually, I've been doing a lot of my own personal work. I've been doing a lot of work with anxiety lately. That's my main focus lately. That seems to be like, it seems all, every student I've attracted lately has been dealing with anxiety. A lot of people I've been, you know, speaking with or whatever, everything has to do with anxiety. So that's been my main focus lately.
Mm.
Um, years ago, I was diagnosed as having bipolar disorder. I was put on medications I was on medications for a couple years. I had been on medications for depression a couple times before that, like a few months at a time. And then, it was like situational.
Mm-hmm.
And then at one point, I was going to the doctor for depression. We were kind of playing with different medications and, seeing what works. Every time that, anytime you get on any kind of medication like that, it's trial and error. That's all it is.
Yes.
So we were playing with different ones, and then she changed what I was on at the time wasn't working for me. I don't remember what the details were, but then she gave me a medication that was for bipolar, and she gave me a diagnosis of bipolar. And I asked her, just out of curiosity, why? Where'd that come from? I didn't know much about it at the time. Um, Only thing I knew was anybody that I'd ever heard of that had bipolar disorder their life was kind of a mess. They were in and out of hospitals. They were always on, struggling with their medications. Anybody that had anything to do with bipolar. That's all I knew about it.
Mm.
So anyway, so at that moment, I asked her, just out of curiosity, why the diagnosis? And she said, well, you came in here saying that you were depressed. And you were telling me everything that's going on and stuff like that. But you smile the whole time. And every time we talk, every single time we talk, you are full of energy, you're full of pep. And basically my episodes to her seemed like manic episodes.
Mm,
And bipolar is basically the new name for manic depressive.
right.
Well, I lean more towards the manic side,
Huh.
apparently. So even when I'm depressed, I tend to get manic. So hence sometimes I babble. But so that kind of, to me, everybody I know that has any kind of diagnosis considers themselves to be broken.
Mm,
They're broken in some way, whether
yeah.
it was a birth defect or there was some kind of trauma or abuse or something that led them down that path or whatever. They were broken somehow.
Mm,
So that's why I thought that topic would be a perfect topic for on my end to discuss, for the from broken to whole, because I'm not broken. I once thought I was, but I'm not. I'm perfectly broken in all the places I'm supposed to be broken, and all the pieces are right where they're supposed to be.
that's
So that's today's conversation.
it's a great perspective, and I can relate to much of what you're saying. My wife and I, we've been married 28 years.
Mm-hmm.
When we had been married about 10 years, we separated. And and our separation was about 2,400 miles. We moved.
Oh.
Martha, my wife, took our kids from where we were living in Portland, Oregon, back to Asheville, North Carolina, which is where she is from.
Mm-hmm.
And during the separation, I started to see a therapist and was just trying to figure out what was going on with me. Why did things seem to be broken, not only in our marriage, but with what was going on with me, which honestly was a major contributor to the fact that we were separated. And when I met with that therapist after a few sessions, she diagnosed me with having bipolar, and I'm like, okay.
Oh, really? You too? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yes. And
they were bros.
and at first there was something that kind of felt good or right about that, because it helped me to put the pieces together that seemed to be very scattered. Mm-hmm. And so I got on medication then. And like you said, getting the medication right is challenging with that diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And many other related diagnoses. Fast forward a number of years, and I'd been seeing my primary care physician, and was really, really depressed at work, and was just I was burnt out, heading out to be even more burned out. Okay. And my primary care physician used the word dysthemia, and I'm like, what the frick does that mean?
Sounds big and scary.
But basically what it means is that whereas you expressed being on the more manic side, I was more on the depressed side. Right. Especially at that time. And just trying to figure out, how do I navigate? How do I move forward? How do I not
lay in bed and sulk all day?
Or go into work and just literally have to force myself to be there the whole time, and get up Monday morning. I mean, I felt like I had no options, that it was just something was very broken and I did not know how to fix it. Mm-hmm. And I'm someone who in general is pretty good at fixing things. From a very young age, I was the kid who took apart the the blender to see how it worked, and just did various things like that, and was my mother was fortunate enough that when I took the blender apart, I could also put it back together.
Oh, nice for her.
So we didn't just end up with a bunch of broken appliances around it. But no matter what I did, I couldn't figure out what was going on with me. Well,
Yeah.
how do I make sense of what's going on inside? And I remember thinking, the thing that is broken in me is my brain, and whereas my brain is always in the past been the thing that has gotten me out of trouble, it seems like
Yeah. So you figure now you're screwed.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do I deal with this brokenness?
Yeah.
And I really didn't. And I am always someone who, when I encounter a problem, read a ton of books and articles, and I do a ton of research, and
You fall down rabbit holes.
I do fall down rabbit holes, but
I do too. That's the only reason I can relate. That's why I'm saying it.
but I also learned a whole lot about mental health, and about ADHD and bipolar and depression, and learned a whole lot. But all that knowledge didn't really solve the problem. All it did was help me to be able to describe what was going on more effectively.
I think sometimes all that research sometimes will scare the shit out of you also.
It can. Fortunately, the stuff that I was researching, the people had a positive spin.
Oh, good. Okay.
In general. I mean, there were also things that did scare the crap out of you.
Yeah. Well, my big thing on all of that is this is a topic. This is one of those topics that I can go on and on about. My big thing on that topic is that when you're given a diagnosis like that, you're basically you're told that it's a life sentence.
Mm-hmm.
You're told that you will be on medication for the rest of your life.
Right.
Whether it's this, we'll probably have to tweak it. We'll have to change dosages, maybe try something different. You'll build up a resistance, you'll build up a tolerance, and all that stuff. But you will, for the rest of your life, you will be on medication because because your body does not produce the right chemicals for you to function normally, properly, for you to be a functioning, productive, happy adult.
Right. Yep.
Is pretty much what the profession, what the industry, what big pharma will tell you.
Big pharma and your therapist and your counselor.
Right. Well, anybody who's told because that's what big pharma will lead you to believe.
Well, yeah, and
I don't blame the pharmacist, because the pharmacist only knows what they're taught.
Right.
It's just the industry itself is what I have something against.
Yeah, and I'm not.
And I wouldn't say, first of all, I would never tell somebody to get off medication. First of all.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, if you do decide that you want to, make sure you do it with the cooperation of a doctor.
Right. Yes.
I'm not saying, they're all evil, you see them turn tail and run or whatever. It's there for, it does serve a purpose. It helps take the edge off so that you can actually make some sense of your thoughts sometimes.
Yes.
Because sometimes when the thoughts are all blah,
it does help to clarify a lot of what's going on and to provide some structure, right, and some resources. Yeah.
But I think I think we'll call it talk therapy. I mean, there's so many different versions of it. I'm calling it talk therapy because it does involve talking.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that is the part that is left out, because I know so many people who get on medications, and then when something isn't right, they go tweak their medications. They still haven't talked to anybody about whatever the initial problem is.
Right.
In the meantime, their physical symptoms get worse, and they're scaring the shit out of themselves, and they're having panic attacks now, and they're having you know, and now you think you're going to have a heart attack because you're having heart palpitations.
Yeah, because of all the anxiety and all the stuff that's going.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
all it does is perpetuate more.
yeah.
And that's just, sorry, it's my opinion. Sorry for
Well,
like ranting.
again,
but
you're not alone in that.
yeah.
For me, I think in general, most of the time that I was on medication, I was also in therapy.
Okay.
And one of the things that I learned is that there's a huge difference between different therapists. Some therapists can be really helpful and some can be really not so helpful.
Not. Yes.
And
Yep.
finding the right therapist makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So anyway, but also just even with the talk therapy and the medication and whatever else you're doing to put the pieces back together, I
Mhm.
find that it also really helps to, to figure out for yourself what is going on. And one of the ways that I have done that is through writing and, just lots of different
Right.
practices, writing, meditation, going on walks, just lots of different ways to slow down the unhelpful chatter and to
Right.
start listening and finding the positive.
The cheering section.
Right, yes. So if we were to go from broken to whole,
Mhm.
I honestly think it does help for us to identify and say, okay, this part of me is broken. This part of me is not working
See,
as
I don't agree with that.
well. Let
I
me
don't agree
finish.
with
Let
it.
me
I'm
let me
sorry.
finish.
Go ahead. Okay.
What I'm saying is that to say this isn't, I mean, you went to the doctor because you were feeling depressed.
Right.
That was not something that you wanted to continue to stay in. If you had
Mhm.
not gone to the doctor, not identify that you were feeling depressed,
Mhm.
you would have just continued to stew in whatever it was that was causing you to be depressed, right?
Right. Yes.
And so that's what I'm saying, is that it helps to identify, to label, to name, whatever's going on, and to take action towards resolving that, right?
Yes. I and I'm gonna again. I'm speaking for myself. This is all just my opinion. I think that people. The problem is that people start to identify themselves by their diagnosis.
Right. I'm
You know,
bipolar. I'm
right. I
whatever.
am bipolar. Right. Saying I am bipolar. I am schizophrenic. I am, you know, or even better when they say I'm a schizophrenic.
Hmm.
Okay. So now that's even, wow, really? So now, wow, schizophrenia now is its own person and you are that person.
Right. And it kind of
So
folds everybody else into the same.
exactly. So
Schizophrenics are this way, bipolar people are this
yes,
way.
exactly. Right. So I think that um I haven't been, let me mention this, that I don't think I've mentioned in this conversation, that I haven't been on medications in years. I got off my medications years ago. I was working with a psychiatrist at the time. And Dr. Can was wonderful. He was very supportive. I have tried to do that with other psychiatrists in the past that were resistant to my getting off the medications, and they would try to discourage me from reducing dosages and, find whatever excuse to put me on something. And anyway, it just falls into that whole thing. I'll say they're further brainwashed by big pharma is what I'll say. Anyway, Dr. Ken was very supportive. And as I was reducing the dosages, he was just kind of keeping an eye and asking the questions and stuff like that. And then when I was off of everything, I kept seeing him for another month or couple months or something. And then we were done.
Yeah.
And he left the door open. He said, give me a call if you need to. So, but I think that is very important, is to have a doctor that will support you in that. But I really think that the biggest problem lies in what big pharma teaches us about all the, I think the diagnosis, it doesn't define you,
Right.
you
But
know, and that's
yeah,
the
I mean,
problem.
it's a characteristic, it's kind of like,
Right.
I'm a short guy,
Right. Right. What are you going to
uh,
do about it?
I could probably take all kinds of growth hormones or whatever, but that isn't the solution.
You can buy the
Um,
lift shoes.
right.
You buy the
Yeah.
lift shoes. There you
Elevator
go.
shoot going up, um, but I think it is different. There's a distinction between recognizing symptoms or characteristics and identifying with those symptoms and characteristics, that
Mhm.
like, again, with being a short man, and I'm
Mhm.
5'2",
Okay.
when you and I stood next to each other, I don't know, honestly, I don't remember which one of us is taller, but I,
Well, I found out last year I'm 5'3". I always thought I was 5'2",
okay.
but I had them remeasure and it turns out I really am 5'3".
Wow. So you're
I was
slightly
very
taller than I
excited.
am.
I'm very excited about that. I gained an inch.
Wow. Anyway, and when I was younger, that was a terrible onus on me that, that I was such a short guy, and,
Mhm.
even the women around
Yeah.
me were shorter than or taller than I am.
Mhm.
And I was just really wrapped up in it, and really kind of miserable that I had this terrible thing happen to me. And I was seeing
Right.
that happen with my own children when they're like, I really wish I wasn't so short. And it's like, okay, I mean, I get it. I've been there.
Yeah,
But
and now you're thinking, "Oh, it's all my fault."
well,
They wouldn't be so short if it wasn't for me.
that's what they were thinking. It wasn't what I was thinking. But there's something about owning a characteristic and being owned by a characteristic, right? When I could just let go of, I happen to be a short person, and there's actually a fair number of benefits that come from being a shorter guy. For one thing, my wife and I are almost exactly the same height, which is nice. I rarely bump my head on things. I,
And it's always funny when you do.
right.
It's always funny when you do. Oh my God, even I bumped my head on that thing.
And I've had to, another thing that I have told myself about being a short guy is that I've had to be more creative than the average person, because
Yeah.
the world is not designed for short people. So when that box of cereal is on the top shelf and you don't know, you
Who the hell
can't
put it
reach
up
it,
there? Who the hell put that up there?
then you have to get creative as to how you're going to get it down.
Right.
It's probably also made me a better climber than I would have otherwise.
My brother's only 5'3" also, or he's 5'3", 5'2". He might be 5'2". I'm not sure. So,
That poor guy.
well,
But whether we're talking about height or mental health or
right.
whatever, we can be owned by the diagnosis or the characteristic, or we can own the characteristic and say, okay, well, given that I am short and I'm depressed, what can I do about it? How do I navigate?
Actually, if you don't mind, I will talk about my brother here for a second, because both of those instances, my brother actually, after he turned 30, he got a vasectomy because
Mm,
he did not want to have kids. When I asked him why, because he's wonderful with kids. Kids love him and he's fantastic with them. And he loves kids. And he loves, every woman that he's been with that has kids, he loves being a dad. So when he did that, I asked him why. And he said it was because, sorry. And he said it was because he didn't want his kid to deal with the stuff that he dealt with from being so short. And he's he's on Ritalin or Adderall or whatever, so he's had problems with, learning disabilities and stuff like that. So he didn't want to procreate because of that. And that breaks my heart because he is such a good dad. He's so good with, any, step kids. He hasn't been married, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So good with them. And it breaks my heart to know that, he gave that up all because he thinks he's not good enough, or he's not enough, or,
Yeah. Now while I have 4 kids,
Mhm.
I can relate. For one thing, at least one of my children has said similar things, that they don't want to have children because they don't want to continue
They
to,
don't want to inflict their pain or
right.
something. Yeah.
But honestly, now from this perspective, having gone through all the difficulties that I've dealt with because of my mental health challenges, I'm actually really grateful for them at this point.
Yeah.
Because of them, I've seen things a little bit more clearly than I believe I would have otherwise. I would have just taken for granted, everybody is like this, everybody's healthy, everybody's, nobody
Right.
deals with, because of the challenges that I have a lot more compassion for other people who deal with challenges. And because of the darkness that I've gone through, I've also seen the light a lot more brightly than I would have otherwise, and navigated to those areas of light.
I have seen the light. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
Thank you.
I held it back for a second, but I couldn't resist.
Amen, sister. The other thing about me is I'm also really sensitive to light, so that when Martha and I were driving around last night, and we'd get behind cars or be passing cars or whatever, and it seems now with these bloody halogen lights,
Yeah.
I am blinded. I've always struggled
Oh.
to drive at night because lights are just incredibly bright for me.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you how many times I've walked out of a building and literally can't see anything except for white, because I'm just so sensitive to it. And so I'll oftentimes put my hand on one of my kids or my wife in order for them to guide me forward, so that.
Oh, really? Wow. My eyes are very sensitive to light also. And my husband doesn't drive at night for similar reason. So there's, as far as the light goes, but I've thought about it before when my eyes were giving me problems. I've thought about it before. It's like, I'm so grateful that I have my eyes.
Yes.
Because I know a lot of people who, they only have one, their other eye is, maybe a glass eye or whatever.
Right. Or totally blind, or.
Right. And then it makes me think of, yet again, I fall back to gratitude, and everything for me falls into that.
Well, talking about this reminds me of a friend who is blind, and she's a speaker, and one of the things that she speaks about is being a blind skier.
Oh, okay.
Which is pretty amazing.
Yes, it is. It's brave.
That someone can have a challenge like that and not let that challenge keep them from doing something
That's
they want
awesome.
to do.
Wow. Yeah.
So we can look at, the challenges that we have and let them stop us from doing things like having kids, or, following our heart and pursuing our dreams.
Right.
Or we can say, okay, well, I acknowledge that I have this challenge. I acknowledge that, I may be impulsive or depressed or short or,
yeah,
sensitive to light or whatever. But rather than letting that challenge keep me from doing what I want to do, either just acknowledging it and finding some other way to do it anyway, like skiing blind, or
right.
Or, how can I turn this so-called negative into a positive? How do
Right.
I take my challenge with depression and, for me, suicidal ideation and even attempts, and use that to create a better life for myself rather than a lesser life? How do I stand tall when I'm only 5'2"?
I have, as you know, and I could speak about it as from I guess you'd call it from a metaphysical point of view. Um, but that would take up a whole episode in itself, and I'm not going to do that. But um, I will say that I am not broken. Um, I am whatever I think I am.
Hmm.
At one time, I thought I was broken, and then I was. Now, I am right where I'm supposed to be. And I still have, let's call them, manic episodes. But I've reframed them. My manic episodes would be, okay, I'll go into the metaphysical part of it, but let's say my manic episodes are always when I have so much energy. I'm really super excited about something, and I can't sleep at night when I know that the next day I've got something I'm super stoked about. I can't sleep at night with that because I'm so excited about it.
Yeah.
And that would be considered a manic episode. So instead, but in order to make sure that I don't, fall into any kind of depression or anything like that, I have to stay busy. I have to stay productive. So I am so productive when I'm trying to like distract myself because I'm trying not to like jump ahead. I'm trying not to put the cart in front of the horse.
Hmm.
So I get so productive. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
So,
And I appreciate that. And, you take this so-called negative and turn it into a positive.
mhm.
How do you create something even better? It's one of the reasons I haven't practiced art such as paper mache, or I really like found art type of projects where you take something
Okay.
that doesn't look like much to people, but
Mhm.
with a little bit of creativity, a little bit of ingenuity, becomes something pretty remarkable.
I have a friend that does that. It's amazing at it.
And when we can look at things with new eyes, when we can look at things with gratitude,
Mhm.
how do I turn this I don't know, bunch of bottle caps and rebar and whatever
Right.
into something cool? We can do that with our own lives as well, is that we can turn the negative into the positive.
Mhm.
I think it gives us a lot of power, and gives us, just one of on this topic, I often refer to the Japanese art of Kinsugi, which is the art when a ceramic pot breaks, they'll put it back together
Oh,
with gold
with
lacquer,
gold. Okay. I didn't know what it was
such
called.
such that it is actually more valuable after it has been broken than it was before it was broken.
Mhm.
And when I think about me figuring out how to piece my life back together in any more wholesome, more positive, more healthy and happy
Mhm.
way, that's a little bit of human kintsugi. And my life, from my perspective, is so much more valuable today than it was
Mhm.
before I put the pieces together, before I
When
was
you
quote
thought you were
unquote
broken.
right.
When you still thought you were broken.
And I think the distinction for me is not only just, do I not, I still recognize that there are still things that are broken with me,
Mhm.
meaning there are still some pieces to put back together, to do
Yeah.
a little
I call them
with.
unhealed wounds.
Yes.
Whether self-inflicted or life-inflicted or birth-inflicted, whatever.
So some
They're
unhealed
unhealed wounds.
wounds. So there's still some
Yeah.
material with which we can create more art, right?
Yes.
uh, the distinction for me is not so much that I don't view myself as being broken or not broken. It's that even if I have broken pieces or unhealed stories or unhealed
Right.
aspects of myself, that
Mhm.
there is hope that those things can be healed, and that
Right.
my life can get even richer and better and more fulfilling than it already is. And my life is already at a point where I sometimes have to pinch myself because
It's awesome, isn't it?
it is. I mean,
It's
it's
like, is this really my life?
so, and I don't think that I would have that contrast or that appreciation if I hadn't also had the periods of my life when I have felt very broken and unredeemable.
Yeah.
So we're all both broken and whole. We're all
Mhm.
perfectly imperfect.
Yes. Well said. Perfectly imperfect. I agree.
So
So, what do you think has made the biggest impact from on being okay with yourself, with who you are now?
well, the turning point that I always refer to is when, and it was a simple little experience that I had. I woke up and was feeling depressed,
Mm-hmm.
and I sat up in bed and I just had this thought: what if instead of fighting this and feeling broken, what if I just accepted the fact that I'm depressed and didn't view that as a negative or a positive, just
Mm-hmm.
accepted it, just acknowledged it, had some compassion for myself? And what if instead of being my biggest critic, I became my biggest cheerleader,
Mm-hmm.
my best friend? What would that be like? Because I had, up until that point, always been such a, and it's not that I don't criticize myself today, but I am so much more compassionate towards myself, and so much
Right.
more accepting of both my strengths and my challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at it, all of it, as being, part of the perfectly imperfect. So it is, acceptance was a huge step in the right direction for me.
Cool. Um,
What would you say about the
yeah,
same
that's
for you?
for myself, it would be living intentionally. Is I'm very intentional. In order to get past these challenges, I had to find out who I am.
Mm,
Because in learning what I've learned, emotions, they are a guide. That is their purpose. They are a guide to lead you to everything you want. Um, they're they do serve a purpose. Um, a lot of times just the emotion showing up in itself becomes scary, and that brings up fear also. But once you start to understand the emotions, and you learn to understand what your life is telling you. um so for me, living intentionally, once I learned who I am, um and all that I'm capable of, because I am, wow. um well, I look at the life that I've created, and I think of the life that that I once had. And not that, and I loved my life, don't get me wrong. I would, a single mom of, two wonderful kids, biological kids, plus all the neighborhood kids. I had a wonderful life, but this is a whole new life completely. Wow. I'm in California. I'm looking at the mountains, at the sunshine. It's 80 degrees outside. It's almost Christmas. Anyway, so
and
I
coming
look at
from
my life.
Chicago, I
I'm
assume your
really
numbers in the
appreciating.
past were not.
Yes. Right. Thank you for mentioning that. So anyway, I'm appreciating everything, and living with intention. Is my job is to feel good. If I don't feel good, that's okay. I have rough moments. Some of those moments are a little longer than other moments, but those moments are not, they used to turn into days or weeks or months, even years. And
Yes.
that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I own my power. My power, I may not be able to do anything about so much about the world around me, but I can get centered within myself.
Yes.
And that's where my power lies, is what am I doing right now? If I'm doing something that I'm not enjoying this. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because someone told me I should, because someone says I have to. I am absolutely not enjoying myself. So you know what? I'm done. This is not going to take me to where I want to get to. I'm all done now. So
That was
that's what's
another
made that
big
mind.
turning point for me, was rather than shoving my emotions to the side and, trying to get past them as if they were
Right.
some interference or roadblock or
Right.
potholes or whatever, using them more as a navigational guide and being curious with them. Why am I feeling this way? What is this? What can I learn from this moment? What are my emotions telling me that I'm not acknowledging? And by doing so, I'm able to move from, the coldness of Chicago to the warmth and sunshine of California, metaphorically speaking in my
Right.
case. But although I've never lived in Chicago. I've spent very little time there, but I do know what winters can be like.
Yeah.
Both the winters of our lives as well as the winters of our location in life.
I've been toying with different, I've been doing a lot with my marketing lately. And I've been toying with some ideas. Do you mind if I throw one past you?
Okay.
An analogy is you've been the passenger for so much of your life, or for however long in your life. Now that you know that you're in the driver's seat, and if you don't, I can help you understand how you're in the driver's seat. Well, now that you know that you're in the driver's seat, now you're kind of swerving all over the road. So what I do is I can teach you how to drive. It's your life. You're taking control of it.
And
So something to that effect.
I like it. And I guess where I go with that is that my work is helping people to not only be the drivers in their lives, but to design the highways that take them where they want to go.
Okay. This is why I love our conversations. Anyway, thank you. I wanted to throw that analogy, the metaphor past you. So if that helps you understand what I do, where I'm at. So I created my life. I think I did a pretty damn good job. So
well, as I try to tell the people that I work with is, you are the ultimate judge of your success.
Exactly.
You get to define success on your own terms.
Right.
And if you
are right. So that's what I do, is I help them redefine success so they can start seeing that you're making more progress than you realize. You weren't even realizing that you're a lot closer than you think to where you want to be.
Excellent. Well, I think we have reached the apex of our conversation.
Okay.
And so for our listening audience, we invite you to become the driver of your own vehicle and to, at times go off road, be willing to go where the road isn't yet built, and create your own road. Until our stories meet again, be the bright light in someone's dark night. Ta-ta.
Ta-ta.